welcome back to week number 5 of Project Planche. Before we hop into today's episode, I just want to say a quick thank you to the 2 sponsors of this program. The first is Ardor, who make this awesome hoodie that I'm wearing, and the second is Oxland, who make the multivitamin that I take. So week number 5 is the opposite to week number 3. In week number 3 we went for lower reps and higher sets. This week we're going for higher reps and lower sets. This week can also be used to deload slightly. There's been quite an intense lot of training up until this point. So if you want to take an additional deload week as well as week number 7, then I suggest this week maybe do 1 or 2 less sets. And that in the combination of doing an easier progression for more reps is going to deload the muscle slightly and give you a different response to all the lower rep strength-based training that we've been doing previously. I personally took a little bit of a deload this week, and I did do less volume as well as doing the higher reps. I actually really enjoyed doing a slightly higher rep range as I've been stuck in and doing a lot of low rep work lately, and it's been a while since I've done any sort of high rep work, so it was nice to switch things up and do something different and do some easier progressions. Without further ado, let's hop into this week's training. So jumping straight into week number 5 of our straight arm day, I thought I'd throw a quick clip in the beginning just to show some handstand alignment that I've been working on over these past few weeks. It's not really part of the training program, but I always like to throw in a little bit of alignment work, as I used to have quite a bad kind of banana shape and it's slowly becoming a little bit straighter. So I think that's mainly to thank because of the shoulder mobility that I've gained during this program as well, but something to keep working on as well. I also throw in these Scapula Push Ups. The form here is not good. You shouldn't be going into, you shouldn't be letting the hips sag at the bottom. You should be maintaining a hollow position the entire time. But this exercise is great for building some strength in your serratus anterior, the muscles that go along the side of your ribcage, and your scapula as well, which is very important for the planche. So our first exercise, we're working with some higher reps for a change. This was a much needed, I took it almost as a bit of a deload. I felt a little bit beaten up from doing the continuous really low rep strength work. I kind of felt like I actually needed some higher reps, so it was nice to do some longer holds, some easier progressions, and just work some previously acquired movements. So with both the front lever and the planche, we're going for just some standard sort of advanced tuck or tuck holds, and we're going for about 12 to 20 seconds. You get a completely different response doing it this way. And it's something that I don't train very often. I think I actually do need to start including more higher rep work in my training. So I actually felt pretty fatigued after just about 3 sets of front lever and planche. You can tell I'm a little bit fatigued because these straddle handstand presses aren't particularly great, although I did manage to rep out 2 kind of crappy reps. But it doesn't really matter too much. Again, this is not one of my primary goals, but it is interesting how it impacts the rest of your workout. I definitely need to work some higher rep ranges more often. Then to pair along with these straddle presses, I'm doing some Straddle L-Sit compressions. This exercise is essential for building core compression to be able to do a handstand press. If you can get good compression and you have good mobility in a straddle, then you'll be able to do the handstand press so much easier than if you had crappy mobility. You're just going to be planching it up. So these we did some anti-clockwise circles, then some clockwise circles, followed by a static hold. If you're not cramping, you're not doing it right. So this is quite a painful exercise, but it is essential for building that core strength. Then onto the elevated bridge hold, and I think this actual hold was probably the best hold I've had throughout the entire program. My shoulders are well clear of my wrists. My arms going into my shoulders are just about open, they're not actually closed anymore. And I really felt my chest was kind of opening up and really ripping open, and I could just open my shoulders up and have a really good body position. And as I said earlier, I think that's transferring over to many skills. My handstand alignment has improved as well. Then because I wasn't happy, I hadn't done enough hollow body work, I decided to throw in these ring support holds instead of the skin the cats. And here I was just focusing on keeping a really strong hollow body position, keeping my shoulders and scapula depressed, and making sure I was tensing my shoulders together, really squeezing with the pecs, squeezing with the core, keeping everything engaged, trying to keep a nice, strong body position in this ring support hold. It's actually a lot harder than it looks, and quite a nice pump in the chest as well. Next, moving on to the usual front split mobility routine. I'm just showing you now, sometimes I do a brief warm up for this. I try to at least get some blood flowing around my legs before going into some intense stretches. These kind of like leg straightens are pretty good for warming up the hamstrings, although I don't always do this. So kicking it off, as usual, this doesn't change too much. The kneeling bridge quad stretch by far, or the floor sitted squat, as I've heard it referred to. This is just a pretty awesome exercise. It's actually a good quad builder. Like, it's a pretty intense exercise on the quads, as well as a good active mobility tool. As always, you want to make sure you're nice and engaged in this bottom position, constantly tensing your glutes, so you open up your hip flexors and quads. And then these pulsing hamstring stretches. I think this was the first week that I actually managed to get elbow to toe from the beginning of the first set. So pretty much cold, I can now get my elbow to my toe straight up. Especially on my right leg, my left leg is a little bit tighter, but I think that's the progression. I think it was taking me into the second set to get my elbow to toe at the beginning of the program. Now I can get it cold. So that just proves the effectiveness of this ballistic stretching. Again, if you're unaware of ballistic stretching, I recommend you go into the description down below, click on EMMET Lewis's link and go watch his videos on his YouTube channel. That's where I learned how to do ballistic stretching. He has some really informative stuff, and would highly recommend giving it a try out. There are some prerequisites before going into this because it's quite an intense stretch, but he lists them all out over on his YouTube channel, so definitely go check that out in the description down below. And mixing up a little bit here, we're going for some front split active holds. So instead of just holding a standard front splits, we're trying to actually hold an active version of those splits. And that is by elevating off the ground. So you're constantly having that tension on the back foot and on the quad, holding your body weight up, as well as on your hamstring as well, having to hold your body weight up. So this is actually a really tough exercise, and I wouldn't recommend it until you're relatively advanced into your mobility work, because it is very intense on the knee joint and the hamstring, but it's definitely a different kind of challenge. I think I'm going to start including this more rather than just doing static front split stretches. What is up, guys? It is day number 2 and we are doing some recovery work. As you can see down there, just foam rolling, some lacrosse balls, and this thing which I've got on my hand, which is why I'm filming today. So I bought this THERABAND flex bar thing. It looks a bit dodgy, and it's essentially a tool for balancing out your elbows. Now, I think I maybe mentioned it in previous videos that I've got a little bit of golfer's elbow, so the inner part of your elbow is a little bit sore, and it's generally caused from some imbalances in your wrist and your elbows. So this is supposedly going to help it. Again, it's not that bad. I do the novel wrist things as well, which is when you hold your hand out and kind of extend. I do that as well, but I'm going to be trying this out today, first day of doing it. I thought I'd show you what I'm doing and if it works. So these THERABAND flex bar elbow sort of recovery methods are quite interesting. You essentially are twisting the flex bar, and then you're resisting the, it wants to, like when you twist it, it wants to then go back to normal, and you're resisting that sort of twist back to normal. It's quite a strange exercise to explain. I will put a link down in the description down below, which has 2 videos demonstrating an exercise for golfer's elbow, which is the inside of the elbow, and tennis elbow, which is the outside. This exercise actually has helped my elbows quite a bit, and I'm still experimenting with it, but I can definitely feel how it balances out those elbows. So I would recommend it. If you're interested, as I said, link in the description down below to where you can buy it, a little bit more about it and the exercises. I then also do my pretty much usual mobility routine. Again, if you want to find my full body stretching routine, then you can go over into the description down below, and I made a full video detailing pretty much what I do a few times a week, and I used to do every day to improve my mobility. Although this particular routine you're watching now, I don't think quite follows it. I usually just make it up as I go along, but generally I follow the same sort of principles. So Again, link in the description down below. Next, we're going to be jumping straight into our dynamic day. And I was trying to mix things up, and I was a bit trying to think of exercises to do, and I thought about these kind of like jump into tuck planches. So the idea is to kind of have like lots of micro holds in one set. So I'm just trying to keep jumping, hold it very, very briefly, and then jump back down again. And the idea here is to build up a little bit of muscle memory. I guess ideally I probably should have jumped into a tougher progression, as that would have made more sense. But it was just kind of an interesting to play around with a few different exercises, and this was quite a cool one. So if you are going to give it a go, I recommend trying to jump into a progression that's very hard for you to hold. So maybe like an advanced tuck for myself, or maybe even a straddle planche. Then using the same sort of principle, I went for these like front lever extensions. This is actually a really tough exercise on your lats and your core, because you're constantly having to kind of like rep up a front lever and pull your upper body up as you extend out those legs. It's actually a really tough exercise, and I think probably really good for progressing for a full front lever. Just a couple of different angles there for you as well. Then, because it's a little bit of a higher volume day, we want to up the reps. Instead of, I can't actually get enough muscle ups to create a high volume, a high rep response. So we're just going to split up the movements like we did last week with the high volume week, except we're just not going to do as many sets. So working some ring dips and then some pull-ups independently, which together make a muscle up. Ring dips are probably one of my favorite exercises for the chest. You really have to squeeze in that push-up position. And then with these bar pull-ups, I'm trying to work a perfect pull-up form here. So the idea is you really keep your chest up, you try not to round your shoulders, and you try to keep your scapula engaged the whole time. This makes the pull-up a hell of a lot harder, but you feel a lot more engagement as well. Ideally here, you should be able to pull your chest right to the bar if you're really strong. But this is quite an unusual sort of movement, because a lot of people will round those shoulders, as it makes it easier to do a pull-up. So give it a try. It's definitely a challenge, definitely works the muscles differently. So if you're looking to build strength in your pull-up, it's kind of a cool movement. Then moving on to some Ido Portal bridge rotations. These are probably my favorite exercise for the bridge, just because they're a little bit more interesting to do, and they require a little bit of balance, a little bit of sort of grace, I guess. And also it requires quite a lot of strength in your rear delts as well to maintain that good position on the way back. Definitely a little bit more intense than just a static hold, as you're also holding a lot of your body weight on one arm throughout quite a lot of the movement. So quite a cool progression to do here. I'm finally managing to transition into more of a high bridge rather than just the low bridge standard version of the exercise. We're then pairing that with some false grip hangs. Originally this said single grip, single arm hangs, and I've kind of been switching between single grip, single arm and false grip. And that's mainly because my false grip does need some work, but man, do these false grip hangs hurt. Like, they are just not a comfortable position to be in on your hands. I did end up switching just to fists on the rings as well. You can do this on a bar and it still works, but they are pretty damn painful to do. But definitely do work. If you're looking to improve your false grip and you can't do a muscle up, then try this exercise and it should increase your false grip strength. Then onto the middle split mobility routine, and we're doing something a little bit different today. So usually we go for some reps and then a hold. But except this time, I think I was doing some research into some like martial art middle split mobility, and a lot of them were looking at just doing the horse squat hold for time. So I was going here for between 1 and 2 minute holds, and these were really, really intense. I did read that you want ideally like a 5 minute hold before mastering like some middle splits, so a long way to go there. And then again, something different. So I'm using the same sort of rep range principle for these loaded mobility exercises, and that is the 5 to 10 reps with a hold at the end. So instead of doing a middle split hold, I'm doing these straddle get-ups, which is what I'm calling them. And essentially you just want to use a elevated surface, and eventually you should be able to do this off the floor, and you just go up from a straddle sit into a middle split hold and back down again. So this is a really active use of those straddle muscles, and definitely engages your glutes a lot more, which is something that I've neglected with my middle split training. Then some normal pancake stretching. Instead of just having the weight on my back, I thought I'd also incorporate a loaded shoulder stretch as well, by having the bar above me like so. So it gives you a nice stretch on your chest as well as the stretch of the pancake stretch itself. I don't know why I did this, I thought it just looked cool. So something a little bit different as well to try. As I'm getting on to this program, I actually did this program for about 6 weeks before I started making this series, so I'm now into about sort of almost 2 cycles of it really, with adaptations and changes throughout. So it's always nice to try and mix up the exercises and do something a little bit different. Then day number 4, we're on to another active rest day, and I thought I'd just play with some more Ido portal stuff. I'm trying to really work from the basics, as you can see here. I think these are called quarter-capping spins. Kind of just a nice little bit of conditioning for your feet and knees, build up some sort of actual stability there, and probably some much needed mobility as well. And then I tried to then eventually throw this into kind of a flow as such, with, I think this is called a roll, and then it's like a broken cartwheel or something into the spin and the bridge. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm really enjoying just having a bit of fun and throwing myself around in different ways. Then into the bent arm day, and we're looking for some higher reps on our handstand press here, so I'm utilising the pike push-up. Now what I like to do with these pike push-ups is I like to try and lift my legs off the ground when in that bottom position. So I'm kind of really putting a lot more strain onto my shoulders. I'm kind of making the exercise more intense and more like actually doing a handstand push-up, because there is some element of balance at the bottom of that position. It also makes it a hell of a lot harder and a little bit of a core exercise as well. I have realised doing this routine that my pull strength is a lot better than my push strength. So maybe in future I think I'm just going to have to add a lot more pushing exercises into my routine and therefore improve my pushing strength. The next exercise for our bent arm day are these friendly chin-ups. Now this is a climbing exercise that I've used quite a lot in the past, and you're essentially, every time you do a rep, you do a full pull-up, except on the eccentric of each movement you're going to stop in 4 different positions or 5 different positions. You're going to stop all the way locked up at the top, then at 45 degrees, then at 90 degrees, which you're watching now, then you're going to go all the way down again, all the way up, and then stop at 120 degrees or 135 degrees, so sort of midway between 90 and fully locked out, and then you're going to stop finally right at the bottom in a scapular engaged position. This is great for improving lock-off tendon strength, as well as just kind of like actual mind muscle memory of where you are in a pull-up movement. Then, as usual, throwing in these pseudo planche push-ups. These are probably one of my favourite planche exercises, so I always like to throw them in. Definitely really good just for building planche strength. As I've probably said many times, you really want to keep that scapula engaged and maintain that hollow body position. I actually see myself now looking at it, I actually do break that hollow body position at the bottom. So the form could definitely be better than it is here, and slow and good form is better than doing loads and sort of not great form as well. Speaking of which, I'm utilising some pause bodyweight rows here. And like the perfect pull-up, the idea of these bodyweight rows is to really engage your scapula, engage your lats, and pull down and really try and hold that top position. I think this is also quite a good exercise for building bicep strength as well. It's definitely actually a lot harder than it looks. Holding that top position in a really locked out way is quite hard, and I don't think I actually have the bicep strength to do it, which is one of the reasons why my one arm chin up is a little bit weak. Then onto the bridge push-ups. As I think I've mentioned probably quite a lot, I'm really happy with my shoulder mobility progression. It was at the beginning of this program I couldn't really hold a bridge on the ground that well, and now I'm feeling a lot more solid. And I think as well, the combination of doing some work with some ilioportal stuff, I've learned the importance of kind of being more on your toes than on the heels of your feet when you're moving. So that's one thing I've changed quite a lot with my bridge, trying to be on my toes when I do it. I think that's actually had quite a big impact, weirdly enough, into my overall progression with the bridge. But on this last rep, I go for a little bit of a hold, and the actual position that I finally achieve is pretty good. My shoulders look pretty open. They're not by any means perfect, they're not over my hands, but they are a hell of a lot better than when I started. Then onto the usual tricep extensions. These exercises are mainly targeted at your overhead pushing strength, so hopefully this exercise should translate over into the handstand push-up and make that stronger as well. As I said, my pushing strength is weak, and that could be to do with the fact that this is the only tricep exercise that I have all week, and I haven't really trained arms for like a year, or I haven't really done arms specific training, so I probably should start throwing in more pushing exercises, more tricep exercises to build that pushing strength. Finally, hopping into our last day of the week, and that is our lower body day. I thought I'd just show you a glimpse of the warm-up here, and that is the ilioportal squat routine. One of the best ways to improve mobility before working a leg workout without lots of static stretching. I also thought I'd share with you the fact that I can now get my head to ground in a squat, which is something I'm sort of pleased with. I don't know, it's a bit of a weird mobility, but it's definitely improved for some reason. Not really sure what that's related to, but kind of a fun party trick. I don't know. So today, just like we did last week, we're playing with some higher reps and we're doing some recovery work. And I was doing some sumo deadlifts last week, trying to get back from the injury I had in my glute. This week I'm going for some really light, and I mean like 40 kilo back squats, and we're just going really nice form, trying to go as low as we can and really focus on glute engagement, focusing on opening my hips, opening my legs, and trying to keep good form. I was actually really pleased I didn't have any pain at all doing this exercise, which is the first time in a couple of months. So I think I'm finally getting over my injury. So I'm going to start incorporating some more weighted leg training and hopefully build back the strength that I've lost in my legs. Strength and power, that is. And that's going to be done through a lot of really light leg work. I'm just going to be squatting pretty much no weight for a long period of time, trying to maintain and build back some sort of stability into my legs. Then hopping into the natural hamstring curls. Now as we're doing more reps, I'm going for an easier progression here. And basically I'm trying not to let my hips go forward at all. So even when I'm in that top position, my glutes and hamstrings are engaged because I'm leaning slightly forward. So I've still got a slight tip and I've still got to work to keep my body in that upright position, but I'm not going to try and make my hips go any more forward than that. So this is more like a hinge at the hips rather than a hinge at the knees, which the advanced version should look like. This is still one really tough exercise, and also if you're prone to cramps, you're going to really hate this one. Then jumping into the bodyweight circuit, instead of doing the pistol or shrimp squats, I'm just doing some weighted lunges simply because I had the bar lying about, and I didn't feel that I got much of a quad intense exercise done because it was only a sort of a recovery rehabilitation, very lightweight. So I decided to throw out my back and then do some lunges with it instead to make this exercise a little bit more intense. The following exercises are supposed to be performed as part of a circuit as well. So the idea here is just to drop the weight, drop whatever you're doing, and then move straight on to the next exercise, which are the single leg glute ham raises.
As I've talked about so many times before, this exercise is great for building glute strength and hamstring strength. And also if you have some wonky hips or you have one leg that's stronger than the other, this is a great way of balancing out your hips. I've used it a lot to sort out my anterior pelvic tilt, which I had, and then also because I have weak glutes and hamstrings in comparison to my quads, or weak glutes in particular, I'm using it to build up them as well. Then into the Cossack-Squat. And because I was pushing more like the 10-12 rep mark, I swear to God this set went on forever, but I had to speed it up quite a bit. As usual though, awesome loaded mobility and leg stretch. And then we're going to move on to the final exercise of this mini circuit, and that is the single leg straight leg deadlifts. Now because we're using a little bit higher rep, I wasn't using a weight, instead I was focusing on just keeping my balance and trying to keep that back leg as high as possible. So the idea here was trying to keep my body in one straight line and trying to just pivot at the hip, so maintaining my back leg in line with my body. And this was mainly to get a bit more of a glute exercise, as well as make the loaded stretch on the hamstring a little bit more intense. This is also quite a fun balancing exercise as well, although my balance doesn't look particularly good in this particular clip. Then I thought I'd just throw in at the end of this workout some mobility work with this lacrosse ball. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I had a pain in my glute that stopped me from squatting and deadlifting, and this, what you're seeing now, is basically what has solved my problem. I just pretty much intensively foam rolled and just self-massaged my glute for every day for like a month, and eventually got rid of that really annoying sort of trapped nerve that I had in my glute, and then it now feels almost back to normal. So if you do have any issues with kind of mobility, I would definitely recommend starting to include some foam rolling into your routine. I try to foam roll at least 5 times a week. It's now taken more of a prominence in stretching, because I feel it definitely helps a lot more for recovery. But that's just a quick tip for you guys. This is coming now to the end of the video. I'll leave you with a short outro message, but have a strong week, and I'll see you in the next video.
So that wraps up week number 5. It was a pretty awesome week. Really enjoyed switching up and doing some higher rep and some easier progressions. Definitely felt like it was more useful. I think I'm going to start incorporating some higher rep work more often, rather than just sticking to pure low rep strength based ranges. Next week, in week 6, we'll be going into our final overload phase using bands to achieve some harder progressions and hopefully overload our muscle memory. But until then, I hope you have an awesome week training. Stay strong, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.